back with Christopher Luxon on Kerre Woodham Mornings with pinnaclelife.co.nz. Easy online life insurance. Call 0800 80 1080. Newstalk ZB.
Newstalk ZB. A very good morning to you. 10:07, Kerre Woodham with you through until midday, and the Prime Minister with us through until 11, taking your calls. Look, we're starting with a positive. Look at this. The first text I see on the machine is, when the PM is in, says Gary from Canterbury, can you please say thank you to him? We're in a
that's nice of Gary to say that, isn't it?
We're in a difficult period, and don't forget there are many of the population that are grateful that the PM and his team are sensible in their decision making, says Gary from Canterbury. So there we go.
Well, firstly, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? You okay?
I'm really good.
Good.
And it was a sensible budget. I wouldn't call it a growth budget. It was a sensible budget for the time.
It's really sensible, and it's important to be really responsible, because essentially we've inherited a hell of a mess, as everybody understands. That we get it. It's our job to fix it now. That's what we're doing. But
it's not a popular job, is it?
It's not a popular job. It's not an easy job. It would be much easier to carry on just spending willy-nilly like the last lot were on a lot of stuff that was actually not driving the country forward in the way that I think we've been very sensible about it. We've got really big investments to incentivise growth, which is good. But we're also trying to support people in the cost of living. We're also trying to invest money in frontline services. So, but you're in a challenging time internationally. We're in a challenging time coming out of the debt that we've got to deal with. We've got to find a pathway back to what they call surplus, which is where your revenues are greater than your expenses, because that's actually important for our future, rather than loading up our kids and our grandkids with all this debt that. Labor added $120 billion worth of debt, and we have no better schools, roads, hospitals, anything to show for it. So we've got to deal with that. We're spending $9 billion a year just on the interest payments on that debt. That is more than we spend on police, corrections, customs, the justice system combined.
But your government's borrowing more too.
Well, in the short term, but as you'll see, we've it starts the budget's for what's called a 4-year period, and so towards the end of that period, we obviously get ourselves back to a surplus, which is meaning our revenues are greater than our expenses, and we start to then obviously get the debt coming down or tracking down at that point in time.
How, though? You're going to be depending on our exporters a hell of a lot, because a lot of the things that you have used to offset, to rob Peter to pay Paul, you can't do again, like the equity amendment, the equity legislation, the KiwiSaver, the means testing.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing with our government is quite a different approach. Like for all the people listening out there that might be small business owners, they look at the total pool of their expenses or their costs each and every year. And government is the oddest thing, and I found this in the 4 years there, is that you have a budget, and the budget loads in a whole bunch of new money for a 4-year period. And then you go to the next year, and there's another load in of 4 years. So you get this layer cake of cost and or layer cake of spending that takes place. What we're saying, and you saw us do it last year, you've seen us do it again this year, is we're saying to those government agencies, I want you to look at your total amount of spending, not just what your extra ask is for this coming year. And I want you to say, honestly, hand on heart, can you tell me for honest that every dollar is perfectly deployed and is actually getting a result? That's what everyone does in their total family budgets that they do in their small business budgets. But government doesn't operate that way. And so last year we saved $23 billion. We stopped, things that we thought weren't actually driving results, and we took that savings and we reprioritised it and put it into other frontline services. This year we did the same thing. We found $21 billion worth of savings over that 4-year period, and we put that money into those frontline services, into opening up investment boost, into making sure we do cost of living adjustments where we can.
Why wasn't the nettle grasped and the age of super raised? Because every other country's had that conversation. Every other country has made that decision. We're years behind.
Yeah, we are. I mean, the position. National Party believes we should lift it to 67. Every 10 years, New Zealanders live another year and a bit in terms of life expectancy. Canada's already, I think, at 67. Australia's on its way there, and certainly the UK is on its way to 67 as well. We have a Labour Party that doesn't think it's a good idea. We have a New Zealand First Party that doesn't want to move that forward as well. And so for that to become a law, you need to be able to get a majority of parties in the Parliament to actually want to do that. So we have a National Party position, which is that we want to move it to 67. but I'm in coalition government. Thank you to the New Zealand people who give us the result, and we've got to make it work. And as a result, you've got a Labour Party and New Zealand First Party that don't want to lift it from 65. I agree with you. I think it makes sense. We are all living longer. You're out there in the workforce today. I remember when I was in New Zealand, very common. We'd have people 67, early 70s wanting to work and keep working, and still able to work and still doing a great job. And so I think that's a sensible thing to do. But the other thing I think is really good is, the KiwiSaver changes are really important. And I've seen Labour out there today saying, oh, no, this is terrible. It's completely wrong. Their maths are completely wrong. And I've got no respect for them economically.
Surprise.
But here's the deal. You and I lived in Australia for a bit. And I ran into an Australian guy last night. And he said, Chris, I get 11% contribution to my superannuation in Australia. They're the fifth, I think, biggest superannuation market in the world now. But, that gives them a bigger retirement balance. And what we've done is by lifting from 3% to 4%, phased in over 3 years, employer and employee contributions, that's going to leave people with bigger retirement balances, because that little bit extra invested over a 20, 30-year period, by the time you get to retirement, some of the Treasury analysis says you could have up to 25% bigger balances because of that contribution rate. All of those investments reinvested each and every year, you get all the benefit of that compound interest, essentially, and that compound growth.
Well, would you be able to get it across the line if you allowed people to access their KiwiSavers earlier, like the tradies have worn their bodies out, Māori, Pacifica, men?
You mean the 65, 67 age thing?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I think you get into real complexity then in managing those, that situation, and every country's obviously had to wrestle with the same idea.
No, but allow anybody to access it, not make people jump through hoops, but only, you'd only access your KiwiSaver if you needed to at 60. Yeah,
if I think about the American system, you're very penalised if you withdraw your KiwiSaver equivalent money before the age of 65. You can do it, but it comes with massive penalties. You lose a lot of your money if you want that. And I think the point is we're trying to support people in retirement, and you really want to pick that age. I get the point, which is the argument is, people who may be doing more manual labour have more fatigued, tired out bodies. I get all that. But even so, when every 10 years the average life expectancy in New Zealand's going up a year and a half, and it's been 65 for a long time, I don't think 67 is a big change.
I don't think it is either.
I think that the complexity associated with all of those exceptions just is a bit of a nightmare to manage.
All right, we will take a break, and this is where you come in, 0800 80 1080. If you want access to the Prime Minister, now is the time to do so. He is here through until 11, taking your calls, 0800 80 1080.
Stay ahead of the curve while you're on the go. Play Newstalk ZB on iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio.
Getting $50 off your first purchase with Afterpay? Good. Not getting $50 off? Not as good. Use code GET50 in the Afterpay app in May 2025 to get $50 off your first ever Afterpay purchase. T's and C's apply. Minimum spend $51. See afterpay.com.
At MetLife Care, they love showing visitors around, so head along to Auto Ridge Village for tours on Saturday, June 7th from 11 a.m. and enjoy performances from the Royal Artillery Band from 12 p.m. For more info, visit metlifecare.co.nz.
Heard something that shouldn't have been on the radio? You can make a formal complaint. Complaints should be in writing within 20 days of broadcast, online at newstalkzb.co.nz or by post to the Complaints Manager, Private Bag 92198 Auckland. If you're not satisfied with the outcome, or if it's a privacy complaint, you can go directly to the BSA. For more info about broadcasting standards and the complaints process, visit bsa.govt.nz.
From as little as the cost of a date night trip to the movies with popcorn and 2 of those ice creams with the impossibly hard chocolate shells, you can click and grow with GoldSaver. GoldSaver is the account that lets you accumulate gold in weekly, fortnightly or monthly deposits from as little as $50. Then, down the track, you can sell it back or keep it. It's that easy. Become a GoldSaver and click and grow your nest egg with New Zealand Gold Merchants, where the smart money goes for gold. gogold.co.nz.
There are always things to do in Tamaki Makaurau. Here are a few ideas for this week.
Catch a classic flick at the Little Lays Film Club in Grey Lynn. Come in for a cuppa and join a book chat at your local library. And check out the local artists performing at Music in the City Centre, part of NZ Music Month.
Search our Auckland events online to discover more great things to do. Brought to you by Auckland Council. All together, Auckland. Tāmaki Turiki.
Strap in for a huge Saturday of racing with TAB. Doomben Cup Day headlines a huge day of racing, while Te Rapa brings local talent to the table in style. Across the ditch or on home turf, there's no shortage of action. Back a horse to win in selected races. And if it runs second or third, you'll get up to $50 back as bonus cash. No more close calls. If your horse just misses, you still get something back to have another go. TAB, get your bet on. First fix win bet only. T's and C's apply. R18, bet responsibly.
All your sporting needs on your home of sport.
This Saturday, Weekend Sport comes to you from Tyler Street Sport ahead of Auckland FC's home A-League semi. CEO Nick Becker, head of football Terry McFlynn, and keeper Alex Paulson.
Being an ex-Wellington Phoenix player coming over to their rival club as well, a little bit challenging, and I think it was just a very intense period of time. It was very hard for me to mentally wrap up, what actually had happened.
Weekend Sport with Jason Vine. Saturday and Sunday, 12 to 3, only on Newstalk ZB.
Newstalk ZB. We do have the calls coming in, so keep them coming. 0800 80 1080. How much has this government borrowed during its time in power, please? Asks a texter.
Yeah, look, good question. So essentially what's happened is in 2017, our debt, as you think about it, the easiest to think about it as a percentage of our GDP, which is the size of our total economy, was about 23%. Today it sits at 43%. And actually, we're actually still borrowing money for the next 2 or 3 years before we actually can get the surplus back in place and actually then start to pay down that debt. Obviously, it depends on how fast the economy grows. As to actually, even in the last 6 months, you've seen our economy slightly perform better than some of the earlier forecasts 6 months ago. But there's no doubt about it, we're still borrowing money. Yep.
And can you please explain how the pay equity scheme ballooned from around $3 billion in 2020 to $13 billion in 2025? It is such a big issue, and it is because that was such a massive own goal from your government.
Lots of different views on it, and you and I will disagree on it. And
I thought it was appalling.
Yeah, well,
the optics are terrible.
Well,
you've got Erica Stanford and you've got Nicola Willis standing up in 2020, proudly trumpeting their support for this bill under urgency.
Yep. So what happened was we're all supportive of pay equity. This is a national government that introduced pay equity, if you remember, back in 2017 through the Terra Nova case. Yep. We had a great piece of legislation ready to go to deal with this. Just remember, because the government, the Labor guys have tried to scaremonger on this quite a bit, is we're not talking about equal pay. We're not talking about pay parity. We're not talking about collective bargaining. We're talking about something called pay equity. And that is about saying women industries, predominantly, that have been undervalued and not actually being paid for equivalent valued work in other sectors and making a comparison to another sector. That's important.
Which is hard to understand.
Hard to understand, but I just need people to understand that, because this debate gets really mixed up and it becomes very emotional very, very quickly, understandably, and I get it. And I get your view. You've articulated that very clearly to me, and I understand that. But I'm just trying to say to you, we are committed to pay equity. But what happened was, the claims actually had to have, were deemed to have merit, and then they moved to being what's called arguable. Then you actually had a whole bunch of occupations come together, up to 90 different jobs come together as actually launching a pay equity claim, trying to compare themselves to a different sector. The claims became too broad. Then the claims were reviewed every 3 years and became more of a collective bargaining thing, because you should still go through a fight, and have a negotiation with a union and an employer, or an individual and an employer, to work out what your employment contract should be. And so that's all we're doing, is bringing it back essentially to what we had proposed in 2017, because the interpretation of it over time had broadened out.
Well,
and the
how did you not know that when you voted for it in the House in 2020?
Yeah, so the legislation got introduced in 2020 under the Labor government. We had a bill in 2017, and then what happened in 2022, there was a decision made that actually the government would backstop essentially what's called we've got private employers that employ a group of workers, and essentially the government might fund or partially fund some of that work, or think about aged care, or think about different industries across the piece. And some of it we put little money in, some we might put a lot more money in. And essentially they just said, oh yeah, we'll fund all of that. And the bottom line is, actually, then there's no incentive on the employer to actually do the negotiation with the union or with the pay equity claimant to actually get to do that negotiation. And so we're just saying, look, we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. There's no problem with what's called the funded sector. We'll look at that and we'll deal those cases. People today can go launch a pay equity claim. We expect to be paying out pay equity claims. But what happened was the whole thing ballooned because it moved from very specific claims to very broad claims, and it became about more than just gender-based or sex-based discrimination in sectors. And that happened with the legislation in 2020, and then you see in 2022 a different change from the government.
Then why didn't you signal that rather than do it retrospectively and under urgency just in time for the budget? You can see why Brooke Van Velden sees the narrative on that.
Yeah, well, I get it, and you've challenged pretty hard on that. I just say to you, having two systems up and running is pretty unfair and pretty unworkable, and we felt the best way, rightly or wrongly, was to go through under urgency, and I support that, and I still support that today, to make sure we have clarity about one system. Any individual, any union can launch a pay equity claim today under the new laws. We expect to be paying out pay equity claims, sadly, actually, because we shouldn't have to do so, because we should have employers paying women equally and equivalently to work of similar value. But we will continue to support that. And then with respect to the funded sector, where the government doesn't pay for, you think about it, you've got some big New Zealand Stock Exchange companies that actually are profit-making enterprises that employ workers that might have a pay equity claim. Well, they should deal with that rather than come to the government and say, we're going to backstop all of that.
Look, and to your point, I do understand, but it's the optics. And it's all very well and good. I'm not even saying I disagree with the decision, but it's how it's done. And unless you get into government, you won't be in a position to make decisions, to make the right decisions. And it smacks of Thatcher milk snatcher. And that's how it will.
No, I hear your point of view. You and I can disagree on that, but I just say to you, we're a government that's actually had to face up to a hell of a lot of this stuff. We had to face up with the fact that Farm Act wasn't funded. Drugs were going to stop in the middle of last year, for New Zealanders. We had to face up to the fact school lunches weren't funded. We had to face up to a ferry that was actually, going up to 3.2 billion, heading to 4 that was planned for 600 million. Dunedin Hospital that was planned for, 1.6 and heading to 3.2. We've had to deal with this stuff, and this was sitting there. And I get it, people, these are difficult decisions, they're tough choices, but the point is there's no way we can afford $12 billion. Now, we saved $21 billion out of the public sector over the course of this budget. Half of those savings came out of pay equity. The other half actually came out of 115 initiatives that were actually saying, this is money that's not being well spent for the taxpayer. Let's go take that money and put it into frontline services.
I've asked far too many questions of the Prime Minister. We'll throw it open to the callers very shortly. Nick Helen's staring at me. I'm getting the Russian death stare. Normally it's me.
No, I appreciate you asking that question, because I know that is one where there is strong feeling
really
on that. And I appreciate you got a point of view on it.
Yep. Newstalk ZB 1024.
Older adults are at higher risk for severe illness from the flu. Help Pacific Clinical Research Network investigate a potential new flu vaccine by joining the flu vaccine study. If you're 65 or older and have not received a vaccine in the last 6 months, you may qualify. Eligible participants will be reimbursed for time and travel. Learn more at clinicaltrials.co.nz/flu study. That's clinicaltrials.co.nz/flu study.
In tougher times, every customer matters more than ever. But if your signage is dull, outdated or hard to see, you're sending them straight into the arms of your competitors. Speedy Signs helps businesses like yours refresh their branding with bold, professional signage that stands out. Because in this economy, you can't afford to be invisible. From illuminated signs to fleet graphics, we make sure customers can see you, trust you and choose you. Call 0800 SPEEDY or visit speedysigns.co.nz for a free quote.
I was just overtaking someone, officer. Could have only been a couple of Ks over. But just for a second to get round them, You're not going to ping me for that, are you? Surely just a warning. I've never even had a
crash involving 3 injured parties. Reported speeding vehicle collided with an SUV at an intersection. 2 victims, stat 1. We've lost the driver. We've heard it all. We've seen it all. Slow down.
In Paidata Rise, everything you could want is practically at your door, surrounded by the sights and sounds of the country. Yet in a vibrant, thriving, growing community, there's public transport. The train station is in progress, with more and more amenities opening around you by the day. They've built your future. Just 5 minutes from Pukekohe. Head to paidatarise.co.nz or visit the brand new show home precinct on Te Rata Boulevard. Paidata Rise feels like home.
Hi, Stephen from Ian Hunt Flooring. Order new carpet this month and you'll receive a free upgrade to Sleepyhead's new enviro-friendly underlay called Renew. That's a free upgrade, only at Ian Hunt Flooring, Albany and Mount Wellington.
Ian Hunt Flooring.
Looking for the perfect Toyota? Visit Auckland City Toyota Mount Wellington, the Toyota Superstore. With over 300 cars on site, easy on-site finance and top trade-in prices, we've got just what you need. Come see us at 8 Forge Way, just 5 minutes from Sylvia Park. Auckland City Toyota, Mount Wellington Superstore, Green Lane and Grey Lynn.
The Prime Minister on Kerre Woodham Mornings with Pinnacle Life's multi-award-winning life insurance online advice tool. Call 0800 80 1080. Newstalk ZB.
Newstalk ZB. Kerre, I ran my numbers through sorted.org, the New Zealand Kiwi Saver calculator. Says I'll be 20k better off with the budget changes. Hipkins is wrong as usual, says Simon. Oh,
that's a really good point.
Is it?
No, can I just say
Yeah,
that because Labor is trying to make this argument that you're going to be worse off with KiwiSaver. There's nothing further from the truth, right? Honestly, the Treasury say, and they've run through a number of scenarios, your retirement balance could be 20 to 25% higher by virtue of lifting the contribution rates and having that money invested and the dividends of that investment reinvested. You know that is just the compounding power of money, basically, that happens over a lifetime that sets you up well for retirement or gives you a bigger deposit for that first house. So that is, I would encourage everybody, what your listener just said then is exactly right. Get on Sorted and actually put your own numbers in and see what it means for you. Sorted also look at it in what's called an inflation adjusted period and also a non-inflation adjusted. That's a technical way of just sort of saying, we know inflation will be with us over the next 30, 40 years. So what will the real purchasing power of that money be when you get to retirement? And that's why you should always look at those sort of investments anyway. But there's two ways to look at it. But I just say to you, do put your numbers in and go check out the Sorted calculator because the power of that increased contribution is going to be quite something. And as I said, I spoke to a couple of Australians overnight, and young guy last night. And he said, "Chris, I have 11% of my contribution by my employer put into my superannuation scheme in Australia. I don't have to put any in." So we are a long way behind, and we're trying to find a pathway to get us to a place where actually KiwiSaver now is in good shape. And the cool thing about KiwiSaver is now $110 billion. And that money, your money, needs to be invested. And that will get invested back into New Zealand, back into our core infrastructure. And now that it's of that size and scale, it's actually significant and it can actually do some of the big investments that we need to do. So that helps us down the road as well.
Texas says, I thought this was for people to talk to Luxon, not for you to harass them over your personal pet issues. John, good morning. Talk to the Prime Minister.
G'day, John.
Good morning. Well, morning both. Hey, look, I'm not going to harass, either of you. But look, you were talking about Australia and the sort of situation there. I'm a small business owner and I have a small business here in New Zealand and in Australia and in the UK, and it's a lot easier in the UK and especially Australia to do tax returns, like GST, etc. Over here, it's every 2 months you do a GST return, then you've got EPT every quarter, then you've got provisional tax at various times throughout the year. In Aussie, they just do it every quarter. You'll know that. You work there. Well, maybe.
No, but look,
every quarter you do every quarter you do a return, and that whatever your net profit is, you pay tax on that, and that's your provisional. It's also your GST. Similar in the UK, it's just every quarter. Here you've got all these different dates for different taxes. Why not combine them like they do in Australia?
No, really good thought, John. Really good thought, and I'm up for that conversation. I'll take that forward and back into the ranch and talk to Nicola Willis about it too, and Simon Watts.
Great. Well,
because you're dead right, mate.
Great.
I mean, the key problem we've got in New Zealand is we've turned the country into a country of bureaucrats. We've got so much cost, compliance, form filling, paper filling going in. The only thing I'd say to you, hopefully as a small business, you've clocked that investment boost, which is an accelerated depreciation.
Look, I saw that.
It's a good start.
A little bit small for the big purchases, Chris, but I do think it'll be good for sort of some of my customers here. Yeah,
it's a good start because I think if you can write off 20% of your a new asset, and you know what we've got to do in small business is we've got to get people to adopt more technology and automation and plant and capital and equipment.
That'll be great.
Starting to kick that off. Yeah, but no, good point, mate, on the GST and provisional tax and why is it so difficult. Yep, good challenge.
Love your work. Thank you. See you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, John. With a 2% growth off such a small base, what hope does New Zealand have to bridge the gaps in infrastructure, wages, poverty, I can't see anything in this budget that deals with any of the macro issues.
Well, I just say to you that there's two parts to it. One is that the real prize for New Zealanders who are doing it tough, our lower middle income workers who have had to be smashed by inflation, smashed by interest rates, an economy in recession, and therefore may have lost ultimately people lose their jobs when that happens, is that we have to get the macro settings right. The good news is every quarter of my government, we've had wages growing faster than inflation, first time in a long time. Actually, in our first year, average after inflation wages have actually gone up at $1,100. They went up $80 under Labor because they had inflation so much higher than wage growth. So that's you got to manage the macro, because if you actually care about low and middle income working New Zealanders, you actually run the economy well, and you have to be really disciplined about that. The point's a fair one on what else are we doing on cost of living. We've got some very targeted payments to support some families on working for families. These are low and middle income working families. We've got 66,000 superannuitants on the Super Gold card will actually benefit from rates rebates, which is important. And actually a little thing which I think people may not have clocked, but there's a lot of people in New Zealand that have regular medicines, and they have to go to their GP every 3 months to get the GP to write out a script to go get a repeat prescription. And what we're saying is, look, when the GP writes it out, it should be good for 12 months, not 3 months. And that then frees up doctor's appointments for people who actually need them to talk about their health issues and you can not have the time, expense, hassle of trying to check into your doctor just to get them to sign off on a script for you.
I will come back to that, because you mentioned that on this very show when we had you in February. That was the first time you mentioned that.
It's a way of managing the GP.
Yeah. I'll come back to that. Newstalk ZB, it is 27 to 11.
Newstalk ZB Auckland. Time saver traffic.
Tammy Nielsen's Neon Cowgirl Tour coming to Auckland's Awatea Centre. Now taking a look at the Southern Motorway, a moderate run Ellerslie through to Green Lane. Southbound is flowing rather nicely. The Northern City bound moderate at Upper Harbour. No delays on the Northwestern or the Southwestern. Following sold out American shows with Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson, see Ticketmaster for Tammy. Ivanka Zonich for Time Saver Traffic.
King's birthday deals on now at Harvey Norman. King's birthday deals on home appliances, TVs, computers, technology, furniture, bedding and more. Best brands, best range, best prices guaranteed. Terms, conditions and exclusions apply. Shop online or in store for Harvey Norman King's birthday deals.
Do you feel as tired as your bedroom furniture looks? Then now's the time to seal a deal at Danske Möbler Furniture on a top quality Sealy bed and a stunning new bedroom suite. Danske Möbler, furniture for living.
Hi, this is George Balani from Dream Beds Botany. The days are getting shorter, the nights longer and colder, and this is a good time to be thinking about how you feel in the morning. Aches and pains just seem worse when it's cold, and quality sleep can make such a difference. At Dream Beds Botany, we're always ready to help you make the most of those longer nights with a good night's sleep. That's why I always say, do not buy a new bed without seeing us first. Dream Beds Botany, 500 Te Rakau Drive, Botany Downs, next to Harvey Norman.
Retirement at the Helier means more time for what matters, whether that's visiting family, planning a holiday, or simply enjoying the everyday. With household assistance on hand and your building upkeep taken care of, it's as close as it gets to maintenance-free living. Focus on what you love with the added peace of mind that personalised aged care is available on-site should your needs evolve. Book a viewing at thehelier.co.nz. Oceania. Believe in better. Care subject to availability not guaranteed. Dementia care not offered. One Cover is giving away 10K so you can vacay your way. Imagine the wonderful holiday you could have with an extra 10 grand in your travel budget. Just buy a One Cover travel insurance policy today for your chance to win. One Cover, it's the one thing you need when one thing goes wrong. T's and C's apply. One Cover is underwritten by HDI Global Specialty SE New Zealand. Always read the policy wording to decide if the travel insurance is right for you at onecover.co.nz.
Newstalk ZB headlines.
With Blue Bubble taxis, it's no trouble with a blue bubble. The government's pledging to create 1,600 full-time teacher roles by 2028 within the overall budget education package, which includes $33 million to expand on-site school training. Another $30 million will let 800 teachers access the Aspiring Principal program, and $53 million will go on teacher registrations. The Finance Minister says the whole country will benefit from KiwiSaver changes to encourage individual saving. The government contribution rate's being halved and is capped, and the default employer and employee contributions are rising from 3% to 4%. Sir Ashley Bloomfield says he would have liked more health infrastructure funding, with the budget allocation of $1 billion, a far cry from an April health plan that identified $20 billion of need. Meridian Energy's finished building New Zealand's first large-scale grid battery storage system in Northland's Ruakaka, enough to power 60,000 homes for 2 hours. Work begins on a neighbouring solar farm in August. Audrey Young on how ACT leader David Seymour almost had it right with his budget comment. You can read her full column at NZ Herald Premium. Back to Kerre Woodham.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. It is 23 minutes to 11. 0800 80 10 80 is the number to call to ask your question of the Prime Minister. The doctors warn that the extending it to the 12-year period will lead to catastrophic GP shortages. Pharmacists say the same. Extending
prescriptions out to 12 months. Actually, they do it in other countries around the world. They do it in Australia, I think it's got to 12 months. I think other countries are up there as well. So, no, I don't think there's any issue around that. I think the issue is the doctors will be feeling like they're losing money. They get paid for those appointments, and it's a pretty easy one to renew a prescription. But it's done in other jurisdictions out to 12 months, and I think we should feel very comfortable about it. What we're trying to do there is actually, to be honest, is we know we've got problems with our GP service, because our primary care service, because it's pretty hard to get an appointment with a GP. There's been a big package of work to try and get people into GPs, to get more nurses into the system as well, into the primary care system. That's why we've also extended the urgent, you might have seen the announcement on the $164 million for urgent care and after hours. That's important because probably a third of the people, Kerry, are showing up at ED department in hospital because they can't get access to a GP and or urgent or aftercare.
Or afford it.
So you've got to join the link up between the GP and not just think about the hospitals all the time. Yeah. You've actually got to link primary care with hospital care.
Shane Ritty explained that beautifully, that continuity
of
care and that aftercare.
Yeah. And the same. Yep.
Hayden, good morning to you.
Good morning. Hey, Prime Minister, thank you for a sensible budget.
Hi, Hayden.
Hey, one thing I wanted to raise, though, is I totally agree with what you've done for young people under 20. We've got to teach them good habits. If they get in the habit of working from day one, they will have a successful future.
Yeah.
The only thing that's been left out is students. I have a daughter at university and I have other children. She cannot get allowance because apparently we're filthy rich when we're not. They don't take into account that I have 4 other children and a mortgage when they do the allocation. We're not on high incomes, we're on middle-of-the-road incomes. And what we're saying is our daughter is having to borrow to pay rent and to eat. And that's not fair for us young people. And she's already saying, why should she stay when the government wants us to go into debt just to eat? Please, can you do something about students?
Yeah, so your argument is that you end up getting means tested based off your income, but of course we know that the middle class is squeezed, because of high inflation and high interest rate costs. And, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I call the squeezed middle of New Zealand. Yep. What we're trying to do is make sure. If I go back to the first point, we want people off welfare and into work. So that's why we've got the 18 to 19-year-olds being linked back to parental income. We're still to design that system, so we'll give that some thought given what you've just said. But I think there is a great future for Kiwi kids in New Zealand, and I understand it because I've got kids of 25 and 23. I've also someone who went overseas for a period of time as well. We've always done that.
Yes.
But actually, we've got to make sure we build a country. Well, no, I wasn't when I left at 24. But what I'd say to you is that. We've got to. That's exactly the job that I've got. That's why I came to politics, because essentially we've got to make sure this is a place our kids and our grandkids want to stay in, and that means they have to be able to work hard. Got to get money. They've got to be able to get ahead if they work hard. They've got to be able to be safe. They've got to get good health, good education. Yep.
Yeah, but why should a university student have to be dependent on their parents' income to 24? That's just too much. Pull it back to 20, I can accept, but 24 is too much. My daughter wants to be a doctor. She's decided that at the end of this year she's going to go to Australia because she cannot afford to stay. Help us.
Yep.
Please.
No,
that's
I hear
what
you.
we're asking.
Yep, we're trying to balance it all. Yep, I hear you.
Thank you, Hayden. See, the thing, you have opened the door to means testing, and we've all agreed that.
Well, those are the choices you have to make, right? Yeah. So you've got to say, look, does someone earning over $180,000 actually need to get the $260 for the government contribution for KiwiSaver? No. You've got to be able to say, Best Start, for example, which everyone gets the Best Start payment, but in years 2 and 3 it's been means tested, and we have to say, okay, in year 1 it's going to be means tested as well.
What about the pension?
Pension is something that we've always said is a universal right, and that's not something that we've looked at, but people will raise that with you as well. What we're trying to do is get people to also embrace KiwiSaver, because down the road that's begun to become the way that will drive
how
your
do
retention.
you means test? Because you might have a $2 million home accidentally, like a lot of the Pacifica families in Grey Lynn suddenly find themselves
asset rich, income poor,
Absolutely.
or different ways of looking at it. And that's a fair challenge. But I mean, on the 18 to 19 welfare thing, for example, we actually, we will look at that as to what the way to deal with that with parents. There'll obviously be exceptions.
What will it be?
Well, no, we haven't. We've said we've designed that because we've got to actually think that through quite carefully.
Because once you open the door to means testing, that's the next question. How do you test?
That's right, yeah. And that's just the question that's just been raised, which is that you can have incomes, but actually it's about your net income essentially, and it's also about some of the costs that people are incurring. So we'll think that through appropriately, but the point is a very clear one, which is I don't want under 25-year-olds just drifting out of school and going on the unemployment benefit, right? We cannot have that, and we actually have to get back rights and responsibilities back into the country, and that means that we should expect an 18-year-old, either you're working or you're studying, but actually sitting at home playing PlayStation isn't actually where we want you to be.
No.
And it puts it actually, I've had a number of parents say this is good because it actually now says that I've got to, I can now push my 18, 19-year-old to actually go out and get a job and do stuff.
Mike got a text this morning from someone who said that they've got a 25-year-old sitting at home, and they said, I don't know what to do.
Yep.
25 years old.
Well, yeah.
For the love of God.
Well, you want healthy, independent adults at 18 who can actually go out in the world and actually understand they've got to work. The reason why we want to make this intervention is that when you look at young people who end up going on job seeker benefit before the age of 25, the forecast is they stay there. It can be up to 18 years. And so you want to make that intervention and change and incentivise the behaviour to get them off welfare and into work. We're also going to have a budget here over the next 4 years that's going to create 240,000 new jobs. It's also a budget that's going to grow the economy by 2.7% on average over that 4-year period as well. So there is going to be jobs coming, and we want people to be able to take it. And that's why Louise Upson's done a good job. While we've been in a very difficult time economically and unemployment is just almost peaking and about to come down, there's been more people obviously on job seeker benefit, but she's put the obligations in place because that's still right, that you're obligated to look for a job. You don't get penalised for not having a job, but you have to. Your job is to look for a job when you're on unemployment benefit because you're deemed capable and able to work, and we've got to be able to do everything we can to get you into that work.
Absolutely. Newstalk ZB, it is 16 to 11.
We asked a bunch of advertising gurus to come up with a slogan for our winter escape campaign. They came up with this: Sunshine Coast. Yeah, Sunshine Coast. We love it. And you'll love that you can fly direct to the Sunshine Coast from Auckland with Jetstar all year round. Sunshine Coast. Says it all, really. Book today at jetstar.com.
Your kitchen, your sanctuary, your Miele outlet. Visit the fabulous store full of quality Miele products. Appliances you love at prices that amaze. Make the right move. Make the Miele upgrade with huge savings on run-out products and stock arriving weekly. Your Miele outlet store, 880 Great South Road, Penrose, steelfort.co.nz. Your kitchen, your choice, your Miele.
Ever noticed how some fuel companies are always giving away stuff you don't need? At Waitomo, they only give away big and bigger fuel discounts. Because low-cost fuel is something every Kiwi can agree on. Which is good, because low-cost fuel is all Waitomo does. Waitomo, Kiwis fueling Kiwis for over 75 years.
This land's a gift to you and to me.
With a tough business environment and markets constantly changing, it's a good time to get some fresh ideas kicking around. That's why we started the Leaders Getting Coffee podcast. It's a conversation among leaders about leadership, a conversation designed to help us to think differently and to be better. Join me, Bruce Cotterill, and my latest guest, Distinguished Professor Paul Spoonley of Massey University, as we talk about building businesses and communities in turbulent times on my podcast, Leaders Getting Coffee, on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.
Drive the ute that defies the ordinary. The Nissan Navara model year 2024 run out is on now. Save big, up to 19 grand off with double cab pricing from just $34,995 plus on roads. See your local Nissan dealer today.
There's only a little time left to grab big deals from Warehouse Stationery. We've got unbeatable prices on office furniture, printers, computers, mobile phones and art supplies. So hurry in store for all the big deals. Ending Tuesday at Warehouse Stationery.
Talk back with Christopher Luxon on Kerre Woodham Mornings with pinnaclelife.co.nz. Easy online life insurance. Call 0800 80 1080. Newstalk ZB.
A texter writes, I'm a national supporter, always have been. The left have won by the looks. You have to get out of the poop. We're going to have to tax more. If we look across to Aussie, they have stamp duty tax, capital gains tax, a top tax rate of 45%. Wouldn't it be smart to introduce capital gains tax and stamp duty to pay down debt?
Look, I mean, that is an argument that you're going to hear from the left really strongly, which is that they want to spend more, and a lot of it's on wasteful spending, as we've seen. They want to tax more and they want to borrow more. And I'm telling you right now, what New Zealand does not need is a capital gains tax that's going to smash and punish businesses, particularly small business owners. And that's not what we need. What we need to do is grow our economy. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with some of the package that we've announced over the budget.
The investment in education, I love.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful and really important. The student learning support package, brilliant.
Can I mean, on education, I have to say in my 4 years in politics, that is the thing that has alarmed me when I first came in, and it still alarms me to today. I think we've got three big problems. The first is that actually we're not getting our kids to school. And for somehow in New Zealand, it became an optional thing not to show up and do compulsory education. And I call out parents and I call out principals and I call out the schools and obviously the government and the Ministry of Education on that. But when we came to power, we had over 50% of our kids not at school regularly. That means they're not there 90% of the time or more. And the problem with that is by the time they get to 16, they've lost one whole year of education. So how the hell are we supposed to compete with Australian kids or Singaporean kids or Canadian or Irish kids for high-paying jobs if they're not prepared for that future? And that's why I call and ask parents to take some responsibility for that, to getting kids to school. The good news is we've improved it. It's up to 58%, so we've got 42% not in school regularly, but we've got a hell of a lot more to do there. The second thing is the achievement in our school system's been suboptimal, and our kids have been falling behind kids at the same age in other countries around the world, and Labor let that happen. Half our kids arrive at high school not at the standard they need to be at on reading. 80% arrive at high school not at the standard they need to be at on maths. We had 40% of our teachers not confident to teach maths to 9-year-olds, year 4 students, because we hadn't prepared them well enough to teach that maths curriculum. So what we did was we put in structured literacy last year. We did it under real urgency. We jammed it in so that we could actually teach kids phonics, and we've got halfway through that program. This year's the second year, and it's working really well. It doesn't matter whether you go for what background you come from, but we're teaching our kids to read the same way every day, every way. Then this year we put in place the maths curriculum based off those terrible maths results, and it's based off more of an Australian, Singaporean system as a result. And Eric has done a great job of then getting those resources out to the teachers to support that. And the teachers, we've got amazing, amazing teachers, but the system has let them down. We've got to keep working at that. But the third thing you raise is what I get raised when I'm out there in schools a lot, which is we've got a lot more kids with learning needs. And if you're parents of these kids with learning needs, they want to know their kids got a shot at realising all of their potential as well. So we're going to add 900,000 extra hours of teacher aid time between now and 2028. It's the biggest, most comprehensive investment in learning support in a generation. So it's the right next step as we try and focus on attendance, achievement, and then learning support.
The parents, I think voters and the New Zealand people have to take some responsibility too. You can't just look to the government to fix everything. You can't look to the government to fix the fact that your child is turning up at school not toilet trained. For God's sake.
Well, I think the way I look at it, and the reason I came to politics 4 years ago, because I want the country to realise its potential. I'm going to do everything I can as the Prime Minister and as the leader of the government. And government can set the settings up and it can create the right environment and all that sort of stuff. But then we need our businesses. I can create the settings, but the businesses go out and grow. They're the ones that decide to grow their businesses and take on employees and do all that good stuff. And in the community, whether it's us as families, or community organisations, we need to take responsibility for our own kids. We need to take responsibility for our own families. When I lived in America, it was really interesting. Their mentality, and there's a lot that's wrong with America, but they start with, I've got to look after myself, I look after my family, I look after my community, and then I go to government for assistance and or help. But, it's the point I've been trying to make is that we don't want to be in a parent-child relationship where it's the government does everything and actually business and community and families don't. They become the children, where it's an adult, because We've got amazing community organisations that see the pain, the hurt, the need, the frustration, the problems out in our society. We need to get the money out of the bureaucracy and Wellington give it to them because they get better results than the government will doing that job. We need to let our businesses be cut loose so they actually go out and grow. And actually, if you're a business owner, you actually say, I do want to have ambition and aspiration and positivity, and I want to grow this thing. And that's great. And then we as a government got to make it as efficient as possible and actually get the incentives right in the operating system so that people can make that work. But it's all three of us working together on this. It's not just me as a single Prime Minister doing it all with my team or my government. We're all in this together. And that's what I'm really excited about. And that's what I love about this job is I see incredible people up and down the system raising great kids, doing awesome by their family. You've even had some of it today, people in the squeeze middle, as I call it, who are doing everything right and, still struggling to get ahead. I've got to try and fix that with respect to the macro settings, but we've got to do this together.
Newstalk ZB 9 to 11.
Home. It's more than just a place. It's a feeling, a sense of belonging where neighbours become friends and every day is filled with comfort and care. That's life at Fairview Lifestyle Village in Albany. Our spacious modern apartments offer ease of living right in the heart of the lodge, surrounded by a welcoming community. Come and experience the warmth for yourself.
Visit the open day, Tuesday, May 27th, between 12 and 2 at 21 Fairview Avenue, Albany.
Fairview. Now this feels like home.
Looking to upgrade your TV? The Samsung 55-inch 4K TV at Magnus Benro might be just what you need. The picture quality on this thing is amazing. Colours look rich and natural thanks to Samsung's crystal technology. You'll notice the difference right away, especially when watching sports or movies. One thing I really like is how slim this TV is. It's almost impossibly thin, which means it looks great, whether it's mounted or on a stand. It's a smart TV too, so you can easily get Netflix, Disney Plus, all your other streaming apps without any fuss. And if you're like me and you watch a lot of sport, you'll appreciate how clear the action stays, even during those fast-moving plays. Right now, it's just $1,049 at Magnus Benro, which really is great value for a TV of this quality. Magnus Benro, celebrating 80 years in business. You'll find them 2 great stores, Green Lane, Constellation, or shop online magnusbenro.co.nz.
The world is yours.
Discover more on one of Wendiwu Tour's fully inclusive, unique itineraries. Uncover the best of Japan, cruise the Yangtze in China, or even go on safari in Sri Lanka. More than 40 countries on sale.
The world is yours.
The 2025 Getaway Sale is on now at wendiwutours.co.nz or see your local travel professional. T's and C's apply.
The world is yours. Wendiwu Tours.
Mate, I've never seen you look so happy.
I just sold my business with Barker Business Brokerage.
What made you choose Barker Business?
Well, they didn't come to me with a silly price to win my listing, just an honest appraisal based on stats. Saved me time and got me a buyer, so I can work on my game.
And it needs some work.
Ready to sell? Talk to the team with nearly 20 years experience and nearly 40 brokers. Barker Business Brokerage. Licensed REAA 2008.
It really is.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Way to describe it.
Oh, is that us? Oh, sorry. We're chatting away. Sorry. We're just talking about good intentions and how they don't always get the best outcomes, do they?
No,
you
I
can
think
have the
you've
best
got to
ideas
be...
in the world, but you've got to be able to implement them.
You do. I think, New Zealand and the rest of the world, actually people across the world are actually quite frustrated, right? They've heard politicians espouse off with good intentions, and I get it. But you've actually got to execute and you've got to deliver for people. And that's what, that's the word I use with my cabinet is delivery. It's like and I get it. People will say, oh, but Chris, you should be doing this, or this. And the danger with that is you end up boiling the ocean. And that's why I have those quarterly action plans, for example, because I need to say to the public service and to my ministers, I'm expecting you to deliver this. We know we've got lots of things to do. We get very distracted with everything. But if you choose to do everything, you do nothing. And often good intentions without you want to have a big heart, but a clear head. You've got to get those two bits working together. So, I think that's right. I think people are over good intentions. They want results and they want delivery.
They certainly do.
But I got to say, Kerry, 18 months into this job, we have a great country. We honestly have a kick-ass country, and we do, and we have so much potential. And I go overseas, and I have the privilege of then coming back home, and I go, but man, I am energised because there is a big world out there that actually wants New Zealand's products and services. That actually is what will lift our businesses. Yep, that will lift our businesses. That will actually help our people. We've got good social democratic institutions. We've got lots of abundant natural resources, and we've got super, super smart people that just need to be freed up and liberated and get on with it.
Because I asked you in the lead up to the election campaign why you would want to do the job, because it is so big, it is so vast, it's so crunchy.
And I could do lots of different things, but I choose to do this because I actually don't want to get to 90 looking back saying I wish I'd given it a go and maybe I had something to offer. And I think actually people say, oh, but you're not a career politician and da-da-da. But actually I think that's been really helpful in this time, that actually you come to this job wanting the country to do better, and that's what it's all about. So we've got a great future, so hang in there.
All right, and your song choice is Zach Bryan, Nine Ball.
Yeah, so Zach Bryan, great country music artist, and this is a song called Nine Ball. But you got to understand, country's it's modern music now, so it's not the old country and western stuff. This is awesome. This song, great storytelling.
Okay, we'll have 30 seconds of it. Prime Minister, thank you for your time as always.
With you.
He's sitting in the corner with a six-pack of Corona, betting that his son will win again. I don't want to bet, but my daddy wrote a check that I bet his ass could never cash. He's betting on the 8 ball landing in the sidewalk, cold-blooded killer.